Good evening, and welcome to our conversation, Invisible Warriors, Black Women Leading, a discussion about Black women in the labor movement. My name is Dr. Duchess Harris, and I'm chair of the History Department at Macalester College in St. Paul, Minnesota. It's an honor to provide opening remarks and introduce the panelists for this important discussion. Today's panel is the first in our inaugural conversation series on Black Women Leading, which will run from today through May and feature critical perspectives from Black women in different career fields. This series highlights the transformational role that Black women have played in building this nation, and we hope you will join us throughout the year. These conversations are designed to inspire Black women and provide resources on our careers, personal, and leadership journeys. Black Women Leading is produced by the Basil and Becky Educational Foundation, founded by Mr. Gregory Cook, a noted historian and educator. The foundation makes history and culture exciting and relevant to present and future generations who deserve to know on whose shoulders they stand. We recognize that African American history and culture is a part of a larger, interconnected experience in the diaspora. We fill in the gaps of history and relocate these experiences from the margins to the main pages of global human consciousness. Mr. Cook produced and directed the documentary, Invisible Warriors, African American Women in World War II, and also conceived of National Black Women's Labor Day to be held on April 5th each year. You will hear about both of these things later on. So let's get started with tonight's conversation. We will have time at the end for questions and answers, so please use the Q&A function for questions. Tonight we have with us Mr. Cook. Gregory S. Cook has dedicated his career as an educator and historian to help relocate African Americans from the margins to the main pages of American and global history. Invisible Warriors is his directed debut, or directorial debut, I should say. Mr. Cook recently completed the critically acclaimed documentary, Invisible Warriors, African American Women in World War II, the illuminating story about 600,000 Rosie the Riveters, Black women who helped win the war. Mr. Cook's work has been supported by the Kingdom of the Netherlands, and in 2024, he was awarded the Joe Biden Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award. I will now introduce Ms. Stacey Davis Gates, who is the president of the Chicago Teachers Union and executive vice president of the Illinois Federation of Teachers. While at CTU, Davis Gates has been the architect of bold political and legislative campaigns for the schools and cities that all Chicagoans deserve. She has raised millions of dollars to elect classroom teachers to all levels of local government and challenges school privatizers and union busters. In 2017, Davis Gates was elected chair of United Working Families, an independent political organization for working class people and movements. Please welcome Ms. Stacey Davis Gates. I will now introduce Dr. Martin. Dr. Maria Martin is a Black Studies scholar who focuses on Africa and women and gender studies. She's currently in the Department of History and Critical Race and Ethnic Studies at the University of California, Merced. Her research centers Nigerian women's activism and intellectual history, as well as the development of theory from within the African context. She is a Bill and Melinda Gates Scholarship alumna and has won several prestigious Fulbright Awards in addition to receiving an honorable mention from the Ford Foundation for her research. She can also read, write, and speak the Yoruba language. Please welcome Dr. Maria Martin. Now, Ms. Robin Williams, who worked as a food and office clerk at the Georgetown Safeway in Washington, D.C. for 13 years, where she was a union member. In 2003, she was a lead coordinator in the Immigrant Workers Freedom Ride. In July 2005, Robin became the Associate Director of the Civil Rights and Community Action Department and was elected International Vice President in February 2015. As a community leader, she helped develop the DC Jobs with Justice Interfaith Workers Coalition, and the DC Workers' Rights Board. She's been recognized by the AFL-CIO Washington Metropolitan Labor Council, Jobs with Justice, Coalition of Black Trade Unionists, and has received the NAACP's Keeper of the Flame Award. Please help us welcome Ms. Robin Williams. And now, Dr. Julianne Malveaux is an economist, author, educator, and communicator. She has hosted radio and television programs in Washington, D.C., New York City, and San Francisco. Her weekly column appears in the Black Press, where she writes about economics, politics, race, and gender. Her most recent columns discuss Black women in Labor Day, living in a police state, the house that enslaved people built, and more. Malveaux is vice chair of the Economic Policy Institute, a worker-focused think tank based in Washington, D.C. She's also a commissioner of the National African American Reparations Commission and serves in other civic capacities. She is president emerita of Bennett College for Women in Greensboro, North Carolina, and a past national president of the National Association of Negro Businesses and Professional Women's Clubs. A seasoned leader and scholar, she most recently, this would be last month, spoke at the Capitol about Slavery Remembrance Day. Please welcome Dr. Malveaux. Okay, so now with that, I will turn it over to our esteemed moderator, Dr. Julianne Malveaux.
Duchess, thank you so very much, and it's great to reconnect with you. We go back, as I do with many people on the panel, and I appreciate the tapestry of connections around the liberation and amplification of Black women's work. I don't want to talk much. I really want to bring Gregory in the conversation right away. He's done this film. It's an amazing film. And the part of the film that's most amazing is a slice of history that people really don't know. Why don't we know it? Because history belongs to those who hold the pen. And when we don't write the history, other people co-opt it. We're in a place right now. I'm not going to go there. I promised somebody that I wasn't going to cuss. So if I use a T word, that's cussing. That's the man who lives in a house that enslaved people built. Yes, Gregory. So Gregory, let's just go right to the film. Tell us why you did this film and give us 3 talking points out of it.
Well, I did the film. Thank you very much. Thank you for Dr. Harris for introducing me. And I'd also like to thank all the esteemed panelists who are here this evening. I really appreciate that. But the reason I did this film was, it came as a natural outgrowth of my research and interest in African Americans in World War II. One of the ways this happened almost 40 years ago, I was spiritually compelled to go to Belgium. And, I went to Belgium, I went to a museum, and for the first time, I was in Bastogne, the focal point of the World War II Battle of the Bulge. And for the first time, I saw African Americans in World War II, images and information about Black folks in World War II. And so that led me to begin research, and that research led me back to Great Britain, where ironically that's where I stumbled upon Black Rosie the Riveters doing research there. So that's really what launched it. It was just a natural outgrowth of my interest in World War II. But Invisible Warriors fundamentally is about 600,000 African American female workers in hundreds of job categories who are employed in factories, shipyards, all types of heavy industry, and government offices, mostly as clerical workers. They built planes, bullets, battleships. They built the weapons of war and were instrumental in keeping the federal government running. They've come to be known Rosie the Riveters, but that title really didn't stick until many years after the war. But in the process, these 600,000 Black women, including my mother, Ethel Rebecca Becky Jones Cook, in the process, they endured racism, discrimination of all kinds, sexual harassment, but they kept working. And they're arguably the most significant group of African American women post-enslavement because of their sheer numbers and because they were the first large group of women en masse, Black women, to get out of the fields and to get out of other folks' kitchens.
Okay, again, so moving. I learned very recently from one of my siblings, my grandmother, Rose Elizabeth Nelson. She had some other last names. I think she was married 4 or 5 times. But anyway, that she was a riveter, that she left Mississippi and came to California to work at the shipyard, the Ingalls shipyard, right out at the in Bayview Hunters Point, which is a historic Black community. So we all have some Rosies in our history if we dig in deeply. And that's part of the plea, I think, of the film, Gregory, is to dig in deeply to learn our history. I want to go directly to Robin Williams. I consider her an inheritor of the Rosies. She didn't work in a non-traditional job. She started out as a clerical and retail worker, but she's represented non-traditional women. Robin, talk to me a bit about that.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Malveaux. First, let's understand that when these jobs came available to women during the wartime, there were a lot of discrimination. So Black women, although we were migrating to the North and the West, coming out of the cotton fields and things like that, we weren't allowed to get these wartime jobs. So let me just tell you that labor has always played a role in even us being able to get these jobs. In 1942, labor leader and president of the sleeping car porters, A. Philip Randolph, he pressured President Franklin Roosevelt to end discrimination in wartime industries. So these industries that we talk about, that Black Rosie were in, they weren't even able to get in here in these jobs until there was an executive order 8802, that banned discrimination in the defense industry. So let us start there. These jobs weren't just open to Black women, although they were open to men and white women. So we're going to start there. And so as we just said, we were in these jobs. We were welders, electricians, sheet metal workers. We worked in the shipyards, along the railroads and factories, but we also worked in federal government jobs. Sometimes that was at the bottom, in the basement of federal government workers, but that gave us the entry to federal jobs. So as you know, I'm a labor leader and been in labor for many years. My father and my family, we grew up in DC, so we were all in unions. So we knew the benefit of being unions. And so because Black women were in these industries, those industries were represented by unions. And we know in the 1940s, there were also discrimination in unions and not allowing Blacks, and especially Black women, to get in unions. But because A. Philip Randolph, in his work around making sure that we end the anti-discrimination language that hindered Black women getting into these industries, he also had a relationship with labor. And so labor unions started to allow these women to be a part of their union. And if I could just name a few, Dr. Malveaux, because this, like you said, we need to dig in deep about this history. One, because of Black Rosies, Black women were able to get into good jobs, get into unions that we all know when you're in a union that you're likely to have better benefits and better wages and opportunity for pensions. And so United Electric Workers, they start to allow Black women to be a part of their union. The Boilermakers Union, although there was Black auxiliary lodges in some of these unions, you could be a member of that union, but you had to be a member of the Black auxiliary lodge in the unions. Just to name some more, the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters. We know that because A. Philip Randolph was the president, but the UAW, United Auto Workers, the sheet metal workers, then the AFL-CIO, they started allowing Black women into their unions along with the CIO. And then there were unions that continued to block Black women from being a part of their unions, although they were working in their industry. And that's like the shipyard union. So the shipyard, Black women were working in the shipyard, but unions would not allow them to become members of their union. And so as we dig in deeper, I have researched and found a few women that were a part of this work. They were Black Rosies, but also they were leaders and they were speaking out in their unions. And we know Black women, whenever we have the opportunity, we're going to be part of a movement. And so as they were getting these jobs, they were also advocating for a voice in the workplace and a voice in society during World War II.
Robin, that was absolutely brilliant and so necessary to our conversation to basically lay out the foundation and deal with the history. I think of mutual friends who have had major roles in organized labor, like Arlene Holt Baker, who at one point was Treasurer of the AFL, like Pat Ford, Patricia Ann Ford, who was I don't know what she was. She was a lot of stuff, but
She was
actually
the vice president for SEIU.
Yeah, she was a number 2 person in SEIU, and we know so many others. Unions have provided us with a bridge to respectability, to advocacy, to middle class status. And from that perspective, I want to bring up Ms. Stacey Davis Gates. She is the head of the Chicago Teachers Union, which was the foundation for Mayor Brandon Johnson. And I just love that brother so much. But more importantly, as a labor leader, she can tell us, could put our teachers in context. At one point, probably 25% of all Black women were teachers. Stacey, pontificate for me.
Well, thank you, Dr. Malveaux, and quite honored to be on this esteemed panel. Thank you so much. Let me start off by saying, as the president of the Chicago Teachers Union, I am the 4th Black woman to run this union. And I consider that an honor that our union believes in the leadership of Black women. This union is also nearly 80% female. And that means that there are women workers that we support, that we partner with, that provide the vibrancy to this union. All of that wrapped into one is that this profession has seen a lot of tumult, particularly here in Chicago, where Black female teachers anchored the middle class in the city. The Chicago Public Schools is the 2nd largest employer in the city of Chicago, behind the federal government. What that means is that if you are in a family in the city of Chicago, someone in your family works for the Chicago Public Schools. And 9 times out of 10, it's an aunt, it's a mother, it's a grandmother, it's a woman. And what that means is that the public good has to be secured for Black women. And I say that the public good has to be secure for Black women because Black women dominate the public sector in a lot of real ways, in which we're seeing in the way that Donald Trump has basically fired 300,000 Black women since he's been president of the United States of America. That's the impact of his leadership. What does that mean, though, in terms of, one, how we address that, how we encounter that, and how we narrate that? Dr. Malveaux basically put into perspective that we had to get a mayor in Chicago to help put that into perspective, to be perfectly honest with you. If you look at what has happened in Chicago over the course of time, we have survived the same type of privatization efforts that the president is trying to anchor in the federal government right now. Before there was Doge, there was Renaissance 2010. There was 50 school closings in Black communities. And behind those headlines, behind those initiatives, it meant that Black women were losing their jobs, right? And so what we've had to do here in Chicago is create space to organize and to challenge the premise that privatization, the marginalization of the public good, is good for children and good for Black communities. And we've done that through using the labor union as a tool, as a vehicle to organize with parents, with students, with other community organizations, and always being very clear on the precipitous decline of Black female workers in our system as a result of this privatization. Today, I will tell you that the numbers are ticking up. Today, I will tell you that we have used our movement to expand democracy by creating an elected school board in the city, having a mayor in the city who is both Black, a teacher, and an organizer. We've created opportunities for childcare workers who are predominantly women to get raises. We've created the opportunity to abolish sub-minimum wage. We're rebuilding school libraries in the city of Chicago because we organized contested power, and we made it very clear where the impact lies when you privatize or marginalize the public good. And so I would say that Chicago, while in a tough challenge in this moment, because the president is targeting us, it is also a tale of what it looks like to create movement and coalition and common good bargaining within a labor union to anchor the work in Black female leadership, because before it was me, it was Karen Lewis. She makes this possible in a very bold, audacious, and unapologetic way to fight for Black children and to fight for Black women. And so you can do this work, and you have to do this work in coalition. You have to do it in a multiracial coalition. You have to do it in ways in which expose the impact of policy, but also lifts up the point of the policy. Black children deserve schools that are in their neighborhood, that are fully resourced. They also deserve to look at teachers who look like them as well, because we know that every subgroup, whether they're white, they're Black, they're brown, anything, that they benefit from having Black teachers in their school communities. So yes, it is very important for labor, and even more so teacher labor, which is predominantly female labor, to clarify not just the bread and butter of wages and benefits, but to see their union as a vehicle to create the type of change that helps to sustain the public good.
So well spoken, and so extraordinarily important. We want to take this and put it into a historical context, because basically we started with this film, this amazing film that tells us about the Black Rosies, but we're now looking at you, my sister Stacy, today at what's going on with organized labor and workers. And we've seen the continuum in our conversation. Dr. Martin, could you put this in historical context in maybe 2 or 3 minutes for us?
Yes, I'll try. I'm not known to be short-winded, as my mother said. I
Well,
was
you will be
meant
today.
to
How's
be.
that?
I was meant to be a professor, so we'll see. I am very honored to be here with all of you. Thank you so much, Dr. Malveaux, for moderating. And one thing that really came to mind when Miss Stacy was talking was that, so about the teachers and how important teachers are, and the, organizing of teachers. There's a woman named Nannie Helen Burroughs, and she was a teacher from the late 1800s. And I used one of her quotes on the back of my business card when I was a PhD student. And she said, "We specialize in the wholly impossible." And I thought that was so profound, because she was talking about the situation that Black women were facing. And just by way of historical context of this period of the 1940s and 50s, women overall were treated or seen as only capable, or their place was being more domestic. So that's, a context for all women, but for Black women, there was a disrespect, and that's rooted in slavery. It's rooted in the narrative of Black women that was developed then, when they did not have bodily autonomy, freedom, rights. They were devalued as women and also as mothers. So they were seen as laborers as well and treated as expendable. And so the writings of Black women intellectuals really highlight a lot of these issues from that period of the 1800s, 1900s, and even into the 20th century as well. So it was interesting to me to look at this comparison with other women in the United States. So Black women have always worked, regardless of their age, marital status, presence of children in the home. For example, in 1880, 35% of married Black women and 73% of single Black women were in the labor force, compared to only 7% of married white women and 23% of single white women, according to the Economic Policy Institute. So Black women's higher participation rates extended over their lifetime. Their participation in the labor force extended over their lifetimes and even after marriage. So when they were married. Meanwhile, when white women would get married, it was customary for them to stop working outside of the home. It wasn't like that for Black women.
It wasn't only
And then,
customary, it wasn't only customary, in some cases it was legal. White
mm,
women teachers could not keep their jobs after they married,
mm,
nor Black women for that matter. Many Black women hid their marital status so that they could keep their jobs. Um,
mm.
but anyway, just didn't want to let that go uncorrected. Forgive me for my interruption, but those who know me know I do that.
No, thank you. Thank you so much for that. And so the labor market discrimination that was against Black men also played a role in this, because there were lower wages and less stable employment for Black men compared to white men. And consequently, this meant that married Black women did have a long history of being financial contributors and even co-breadwinners even in two-parent and married households, because of Black men's unstable employment due to racial discrimination in the market, in the labor market. So after this migration to the North, the Great Migration during the 1900s, the 1910 to 1970 period, most employers would only hire Black women in domestic service work. And then there were a number of discriminatory policies, public policies, that reinforced this view of Black women as workers rather than mothers, and contributed to Black women's economic instability. So I know that
Give me
during
another
this,
minute, sis. Give me one more minute.
okay, so during this period of the early 20th century, there were mothers' pensions or cash payments that were given out to mothers and widows. And then there was the passage of the Social Security Act of 1935, and Black women were largely excluded from this by caseworkers. And up until the 1960s, caseworkers really excluded a lot of poor Black women from receiving these kind of cash assistance support. So this exclusion meant that a lot of these Black women, for most of the history, especially of these, support programs, the state actively undermined the well-being of Black families, and they ensured that Black women would be in the labor force only as low-wage caregivers to, white families. So this helped to secure the well-being of white families and alleviated white women from having to do this work. But it created an issue for Black women where they were, trapped in this low wage labor. So we have a lot of outspoken activists, specifically Claudia Jones, and she was one of the women who was active in the communist movement in the 1940s, for which she, was moved out of the U.S. She was sent to the U.K. because she kept getting arrested, and she was oppressed and terrorized in the U.S. for her views. But she wrote this really pivotal pamphlet called The End of the Neglect of the Problems of the Negro Woman. And I'll end with this. So, in essence, in that writing, she says that we need to have an awareness of how discriminatory economic practices disenfranchise Black people through devaluing Black women.
Very good, very well stated. Thank you very much. And of course, anytime you mention Nannie Helen Burroughs, who's a native Washingtonian and an amazing sister who did so much with our education, anytime you mention Nannie Helen Burroughs and so many others, you lift us all up. So here's what we're going to do now. We are committed to finishing this conversation at 8 p.m. I want to have at least 10 to 15 minutes of Q&A. And people, if you want to start queuing up so that Krista can keep track of that, that will be great. And then we want to have you all reflect with each other on what you've just heard. But I want to start with Stacy, because she explicitly was concerned about what we're hearing today and what that means for younger brothers and sisters and next steps. Because what we know, as Dr. Martin says, she doesn't feel free to share her first name, but Dr. Whatever Martin has said, basically, we know that there has been challenge. There has been significant challenge. So the issue, of course, is what's next. Stacy, you raised a question. I'm going to start with you.
Well, thank you. What's next is right now. What labor is being called to do in this moment is tremendous. Like, look, I am grounded in the history of our ancestors as well. If we are clear about how we even get to public education, public housing, the Department of Justice, and even the first DEI program, and I say this with all humility with all these academics here, but if we talk about how we get to those things, you have to talk about enslaved Africans leaving the plantation, forcing the Emancipation Proclamation, and then forcing Reconstruction policies that come out of the Freedmen's Bureau. And so what we have is the infrastructure to an America that is more expansive and provides more of a safety net to people who are due even more. So we get that. The second thing that I'll look to is the Pullman Porters who helped to build the Black metropolis, right? You get Newark, you get St. Louis, you get Chicago, you get New York, you get Philadelphia, you get all of these places, which, by the way, also had Black press, Dr. Malveaux, you know that as you continue to write your column, that these were the vehicles to people escaping the tyranny and the fascism of Jim Crow South. And then fast forward just a few more years into the civil rights movement, where you see labor allying itself with the civil rights movement to create a greater society. You get voting rights, you get the two Civil Rights Act, but you also get a collection of policies that go to war on poverty. That's labor's work in this moment. It is to be a coalition partner to eradicate the fascism that we participated in as Pullman Porters once upon a time. It is our boldness, our ability to instigate a general strike as enslaved Africans with white abolitionists, with women who were leading the movement, both Black and white at that point, to establish the departments that give safety nets to all Americans, quite frankly.
Stacey, I think I'm going to stop you here. If I can, I'll get back to you. But there are a few of y'all. But I'm going to stop you here with the word boldness. Word boldness. I think that's really important. Gregory, you've heard your esteemed panelists. I want to give you a couple minutes to react, respond, say something. And put yourself off mute. You on mute, bro.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. I guess I'm listening to all this and trying to pull it together. And I see these women of World War II as definitely bold, courageous. Many of them uprooted themselves, traveled across the country. They left the South, they moved north, they went west. Um, and they often they were going places where often they had no support, they had no family, no friends, and they were just going for, because there was a greater opportunity, a greater economic opportunity for them. My mother was one of those people. Um, so I think that Black women historically have always demonstrated a certain amount of courage to push against the status quo to create change. And I think these women, these 600,000, seize the opportunity. And I think, one of the things that I have to mention here is that most Black women, most of the 600,000 did not get their jobs until 1944, which is the last full year of the war. And the Black women were disproportionately hired in some of the more dangerous positions like ordnance, bomb making, gunpowder, etc. So, and so often there was also still the discrimination while everyone was paid the same thing in the federal government based upon your level, but there was still discrimination, as Mrs. Bernice Bowman stated. All the white workers got pay graded up, none of the Black workers moved. So even within these structures, there was still discrimination, and very few women were in unions during the war. And in those places where they weren't in unions, Black women often were paid less than white women, but still more than they had ever been paid in their lives. And so that's
And
all I'll say about them. I think they were very courageous, very bold, and I think we stand on their shoulders as
absolutely, those women um, set basically set the table for the kind of activism that we're experiencing today. And I want to go right to Robin Williams, the activist, who has organized workers, but not only that, has been played a key role in the labor movement today. Robin, as Gregory talks about unequal pay, what can you say? This is your second round. What can you say about what you've heard, but especially about this issue of unequal pay in the trade union movement?
Yeah, Dr. Malvo, I would say even during wartime, and I think Gregory said this, but we should be clear, not everyone got paid the same. Black workers got paid 10 to 15% less than white workers, and Black women even less. So let's be very clear. Of course, being in a union gave you more opportunity to have equal wages. And so, Dr. Malvo, I would like to piggyback on what my sister Gates said, and you kind of challenge us, what's next? And so I would say 350,000 Black women have been impacted by these federal cuts. That is not a coincidence. It's intentional. It has always been intentional to cut Black women out of the economic freedoms of this country. And each time Black women look like we're getting more power, we're getting into these jobs, we're now the vice president of the United States, they start to cut and target Black women from our economic freedom, because they know when it comes to Black household, Black women are big contributors to Black households, making Black economic freedom real in this country. So as Sister Gates said, 350,000 Black women have been impacted by the federal cuts. Where do we go from here? So what's next? In Dr. Martin Luther King's book, Last Writing, where do we go from here? Chaos or community? And so we had won the Civil Rights Act, we had run the Voting Rights Act, and then Dr. King saw where there was a pushback on the freedom of Black folks in this United States. And so he could see this vision. And he said, so where do we go from here? So I will urge us, and I said this at the NAACP, I'm a national board member on the NAACP, and I'm the national labor chair. So I get to work with all of our labor leaders across the country. I will urge us to do more of what you're doing, Dr. Malveaux, in my hometown, my home city, Washington, D.C., where I'm a native. That where did the federal government push us into chaos? We must stay solid on who we are. We are Black women. We will advocate. I don't care if we're in the hole, we're in the field, we're going to advocate and we're going to stay strong. So as they push us into chaos, we must do more of this, more of what we see across this country. We cannot work in silos as a labor movement, as the civil rights organization. We must come together in community, and Black women know how to do this well. So within the Black
and Black women have been doing it.
We've been doing it, and we haven't stopped. And like you said, we want to we tired. We can never get tired. We can take breaks. Because Dr. Malveaux, you taught me how to take care of my health. But we can't be tired because we have a generation coming behind us. And this war will continue as long as our skin is Black. So where do we go from here is we must do more of this. We must stay strong, and we have to know as labor leaders, as civil rights leaders, as economists, we cannot do this alone. We must do this together and be strong in community. And with that, we continue to win.
You keep it up, Robin. This woman told me she was going to do something somewhere. I said, you just keep it up. She's always doing something somewhere. She's amazing. We don't have a lot of time left. So what I'm going to do, Dr. Martin, is pivot to you with one of the questions that is in the chat. The question is, are young women students engaged in the issue for future generations? And I'd like you to please keep it to 2 minutes.
Yes, it's definitely, they are very engaged in this issue. I think that the younger students, what I really appreciate about them is that they're so much more open. They see the world as more open. They're global citizens. And so what they're trying to do is engage with different points of view and perspectives so that they can be more well-rounded, so that they can address these issues that they've inherited and that they're going to inherit, that they're still inheriting. So I really appreciate that about them. And every time I see them, they're organizing. They're really organizing. They're protesting. They're, making sure that they're aware of not only the present day issues, but also the historical context of those issues. And so the young people are sincerely a point of hope for me when I look out and I see them and I see what they're doing. I see what they stand for. I see their energy. I really feel that there's going to be someone in the future to speak about these issues. No matter where there's an issue at, there's somebody working on it. There's somebody working on it from this generation, and I see it also in the next generation. So yes.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate the remark. There are a couple things in the Q&A that I'm just going to read. I don't think they require answers. One is, our health is being impacted due to vacation cuts or vaccination cuts, the freedom to have health care choice, etc. This is an issue. Medicare and Medicaid are going to be cut. They keep saying they're not, but they will be. So I want to thank Anonymous, didn't identify him or herself, but thank you, A, for being with us, and B, for raising the point. Here's another point here. Are young Black women finding leadership roles in unions? And that's a really great question from Regina Robinson. Tell you why it's a great question. We're having generational wars. Maybe they're not wars, but they're generational tensions. We have younger people who are mad at older people. A little girl told me the other day, she says, I understand the pipeline, but y'all clogging it up. And I said, baby girl, don't make me smack you. But there are generational tensions, but there always are. Throughout our lives, there always been generational tensions. So this question about young women and unions, Robin, can you take that?
Let me tell you, we got a lot of Black women that are leading unions. We have Becky Pringle. She's the president of National Education Association. April Verrett, a Black woman. She is the first Black woman to lead the SEIU. The service program. And April is
The
young.
sister, oh yeah, because she was talking about younger people. So give me some give us some under 40.
April is young. We also have Roxy. Roxy is with the United Steelworkers. Roxy is up. She's an international executive vice president, but she's also up to be the president of the Steelworkers Union.
Wow, now that's untraditional.
We have young Black women. That's secretary treasurer. We have a young Black woman under 40. She's the secretary treasurer of the AFL-CIO, Washington State AFL-CIO. So we have Black women, young Black women labor leaders across this country. And I can name more, I can tell you more, but Black women are leading in the labor space.
But what the sister who posed a question, some of it resonates for me from this perspective. What kind of leadership training, leadership entrees, what kind of things like that are some of the unions doing to make sure, and I'm going to I see Stacy's head perked up, she was sleeping. But anyway, I'm going to have her jumping on this too. But what are we doing, back in my day, which was ancient history, but many of the unions, many of the econ groups had sort of pathways to leadership, have possibilities. We're going to train you in how to do this. We're going to help you with this. I don't know everything and I don't go everywhere, but Robin, I don't hear a lot of that happening. Is it? What am I missing?
Stacy, but yeah, that is happening, Dr. Malveaux. They are leading organizing campaigns. Like I started out as an organizer, they're leading organizing campaigns. There are all kinds of training. AFT has a great training through their civil rights department. So yeah, my old job, Dr. Malveaux is a young 40-year-old. She's running the civil rights department for the United Food and Commercial Workers Union. My old job, one of the largest unions in the country. Sister Gabe?
Oh, yes, Stacy?
So like I said, we have a legacy of Black female leadership here in Chicago, Jackie Vaughn being our first Black woman, and Marilyn Stewart, and then the iconic Karen Lewis led this union. What I would say is that what we do here is that every summer we ask our people to come in, our members, and be trained as organizers. We have found that this is the best way to empower, to educate, and to give people an opportunity to lead in a different way. Many of our members are already leaders. When you are a teacher in a school building, when you are a paraprofessional, you are in a leadership role. We often mistake motherhood and partnership in the household as good training ground to lead as well. And I'll tell you what has saved my life, being raised in the church and understanding the hierarchy and how those things work, because labor can be a pretty touchy place as well. I'm saying all that to say is that we have to invite people in and tell them that they already come equipped with what is necessary to make this work. But what we do have to do is incubate and coach. Kim Freeman Brown documented a whole host of Black labor leaders in a book probably about 10 years ago. I would encourage people to seek that out, because Black women labor leaders, they tell their story very transparently and specifically, and what they would say really clearly that they need. They need to understand that they will be supported and nurtured. They need to understand that there is opportunity for advancement. And then the workplace also has to understand the layered nature of a Black female's leadership. So I think all of those things are works in progress in many institutions. And I also think that is a responsibility of all of labor, because Black women anchor it to offer that opportunity.
Thanks, Stacy. We've got a couple things in the chat. Someone said we need to love on each other. Find in order to work as a community, yes. Too much envy and jealousies in the workplace, and and disrespect. Nobody can disrespect a black person like another black person, which always interests me. Um, Jeremiah Ellis asked, what would it mean for more, or what would it take for more black people, black young people, to learn more about Rosie's? What would it take for more young people to learn more about the Black Rosies? We only have about 8 minutes. I'm gonna ask y'all to be short-winded. And what I'm going to say is that this is a question that only Gregory can answer. What would it take for more people to know more about the Black Rosies? Gregory?
I think I made this documentary for education purposes and for young people and those not yet born. And it really comes down to finding a way to get this in education spaces. And even during the best of times, um, having impact in school districts is a very tough nut to crack. And I think that's the best way to do it. That was my thinking when I made this, is to get this, particularly in public school systems. The state of California has a law that ethnic studies are required in public schools. It's an area I'm looking at, and my team are looking at to try and make some inroads. But I think that's the easiest, that's the long-term plan. I think short-term people can just ask, what did my grandmother do? What did my great-grandmother do? In this case, maybe great-great-grandmother do during World War II. I think those are questions that can be asked and people haven't asked, and it goes a long way to helping to understand family history. But big picture, it's about getting it in school systems at low
So we do,
and at lower grades.
we do have a union leader, a school union leader who's on the line. So I'd encourage the two of you to be connected to each other. That's how we do it in the Black community. We have to be connected. And Stacey, I will tell you, this film will take your breath away. It'll truly take your breath away. Let's see what else we have in the chat. We just have a few more minutes. The documentary can be supported by the educational nonprofits that focus on Black history. This came from one of our anonymous attendees, Gregory. So he's made a suggestion. You know what to do. We have just a few minutes left, and I want to get back to the panelists that I didn't get to earlier. Just for guys, if you can discipline yourselves, which I don't think some of y'all can, to just take a minute or so, a minute, not a minute or so, like a minute. I will be profoundly grateful. Dr. Martin?
Yes, I mean, we've talked about so many important issues here today, and we also have talked a lot about the activism and the advocacy that Black women have been engaged in over a large period of time, from the historical to the present. But what I would like to offer is for us to think about rest as resistance, because we often do work so hard, and we can lose track of ourselves in that fight. And so our ancestors worked so hard as well so that we could get to where we are. And they may not have been able to rest, but we do have opportunities to rest. And so we should take those opportunities to rest, to honor ourselves and honor the people that came before us that could not. So let's please just try to think about that. There is a book called Rest, as activism as well. So please think about, resting while you work so that you can be renewed, and so that the, work that you do can have longevity.
Actually, the book is called Rest is Resistance. And it's a really
Yes.
important book because it does speak to the fact that we Black women tend to work ourselves to the crisp, and neglect to help ourselves. Mrs. Fannie Lou Hamer died of breast cancer, undiagnosed breast cancer. Why was it undiagnosed? Probably with all her activism, she didn't have time to go to the doctor. Probably she said, as many of us do, it's no big thing. She died at age 61 of breast cancer. So we need to remember that. Is there a panelist? As I said, I look down, looks like I have 3 minutes. Is any, Sister Martin, I appreciate especially your comments about rest. Is there a panelist that I haven't, everybody I think has had a closing comment, but is anybody who's like biting at the bit? And if not, I'm going to turn it back over to, but first Duchess, who I hope is still with us and can take just a minute, and then to Krista. Okay, anything, anybody? Duchess, are you still there?
No, she's gone, so I'm going to close out if you're ready.
That's fine.
Okay. Thank you to each and every one of you for attending tonight's conversation. We hope that you leave this discussion feeling inspired and proud of the contributions Black women have made, especially in the labor movement. Thank you to Dr. Julianne Malveaux for serving as our expert moderator, Mr. Gregory Cook for your vision, Mrs. Stacy Davis Gates for your leadership, Dr. Martin for your scholarship in this area, and Ms. Robin Williams for your tireless activism. If you registered for this webinar, you will be added to our email list, so you will have the option of receiving notices of future events. Thank you again, and have a great evening.